Hello everyone, welcome again to the People's Channel. Now, let's all ask ourselves a question. Do we believe that when we vote in an election, or in this case a referendum, that we ourselves are making the choice where to put the X on the paper we put in the ballot box? Do you think you have a free choice? I'm just about to show you that maybe you could be mistaken. I'm just about to show you that your choice is one that, had you understood and known all the facts, you might have made differently. This video will show you material that nearly no ordinary person, us, has ever seen before. It's not illegal to possess this material, since it will have been obtained under the Freedom of Information Act. But it is material that the government especially would not want anyone to see, and so it has not been seen until now. The People's Channel exists to inform people of the truth. This is the story behind the last referendum in 1975 held by Harold Wilson. It is contained in documents marked secret or confidential or restricted for the most part. It's an illustration of how perfectly the minds of the public were manipulated into agreeing to remain in what was then laughingly called the common market. It's the story of what is happening right now to us, the general public, and that despite the government, Electoral Commission and EU assurances to the contrary, the European Union has huge involvement in the 1975 referendum, just as it has today. Prepare yourselves to see what virtually no one has ever seen before. You're about to get a sneaky peek at the dark underworld of politics. It begins here. Instructions for the publicity campaign. This is a picture of the full page, just so that you can see the kind of documents that we're looking at. And here's the first paragraph. The message. The message should be coherent and simple. Repetition is essential. Any trained marketing person knows that repetition is one of the most important keys to success. If people hear the same thing often enough, they will begin to believe it. I won't go into the psychology of this, it just takes too long, but repetition of the same message over and over again is a form of brainwashing. Did you notice the endless repetition of certain phrases in the last election campaign? We want to go from a low-wage, high-tax, high-welfare society to a high-wage, low-tax, low-welfare society. I don't know about you, but I got to the point where this endless mantra, parroted by all the conservatives on every possible media outlet, just made me want to scream. However, how many people do you think ended up believing that this was the only way to the security of a healthy economy? I saw loads of posts on Facebook from people I would never have imagined, talking about the scroungers and parasites who are on benefits. Tell that to the steel workers and coal miners who so recently lost lifetime jobs, skilled workers who, as one paper reported, are now being sanctioned by the Department of Work and Pensions for not being too keen to go and take a job at McDonald's. Now let's getting back to the documents for the preparations. This is the first opening sequence to the whole report about this. So, Approach to Europe 1970-71. The information campaign in Britain from late 1961 to July 1971 and beyond in support of our application for EEC membership differed from any other recent government-inspired publicity operation in its length and the high and sustained level of ministerial involvement and control over it. The latter was justified, the battle was won. But as in military sphere, it may turn out to be just the first of a several concerned with our interests in the EEC. This in itself is sufficient justification for placing on record the outline of the campaign. So, interestingly, they do see this as a battle. Well, this time, with the help of social media, so do we. Only this time, it's not just another battle. The way we decide to vote in this coming referendum will decide the fate of this country forever. Once in, it will be impossible to get out. The following paragraph, as you will see, states clearly how the involvement of the European Union was formed. Formation of the European Communities Information Unit, ECIU. When towards the end of 1969 there were moves to resume negotiations between Britain and the Six, it became clear that there was a need for formal arrangements within the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to ensure that our supporting information effort was as effective as possible. The ECIU was established to concert, i.e. formulate, the strategy of overseas information work in support of our application, and to study hostile propaganda and advise on the means of countering it. The unit was asked to keep in touch, where appropriate, with various non-governmental bodies in Britain, and the unit was represented on a Whitehall committee. So, the European Communities Information Unit was represented in the heart of our government on a Whitehall committee, no less. Can't get much more involved than that. Let's just see how extensive that involvement was. Mr. S.A. Budd was detailed to work closely with and to assist the European movement and to advise on the handling of the media. IRD, which stands for Information Research Department, at the same time set up a special editorial/research section to work closely with ECIU. The IRD/ECIU cooperation produced the basic material on which most of the subsequent productions were based: booklets, talking points, speeches, notes, etc. Thus, throughout the winter of 1970 to 71, all the infrastructure was laid down, the preparatory work initiated, and the ground prepared by the European movement in consultation with FCO. FCO, remember, is the Foreign Commonwealth Office departments. The European movement used this time to strengthen its own organisation by the appointment of regional officers and to raise money from industry for use in the summer of 1971. This preparatory work ensured that the government's open campaign was launched and carried out so effectively between July and October 1971. The poor, unsuspecting public. Strike one. I suppose nobody would have realised that the European Union had been heavily inserted into the government campaign to provide scripts, research, strategies for countering negative information, and much, much more. We must have fondly imagined all our information was coming from our own government. Let's continue and see what else the European Communities Information Unit got up to. A network of 150 experienced speakers was established, and by the beginning of 1971, the European movement was supplying up to 80 speakers per month in London alone. An extensive programme was developing in the provinces. Major events included women's conferences attended by 5,000 delegates, trade union conferences and conferences for industrialists. Seminars and briefing conferences for European movement speakers were held throughout the country. Note that briefing was held for all European movement speakers. In other words, they were told what to say. The media. Firstly, News Department was responsible for briefing journalists on the progress of the negotiations and for stimulating favourable press comment on our application, a very important factor in the campaign. Secondly, ECIU was involved in briefing provincial newspapers and regional television organisations, and IRD wrote over 50 articles for national and regional newspapers, trade union and political magazines for signature by pro-marketeers. Says it all. There were in addition regular contacts between ECIU and the producers of the major current affairs programmes. There's so much information here that time doesn't permit except to show a fraction of it, but I think you're probably becoming or getting the message that all the information put out by speakers, media, press and TV was carefully scripted and overseen by the European Communities Information Unit. I'll just show you a couple more. Ministers of the Standing Group accordingly decided that approaches were needed to all the media to prime them and seek their interest and support. They were made to all the national newspapers except the Daily Express, Spectator, Newsman and Morning Star, which were known to be firmly opposed to the EEC, and to a number of the regional newspapers at management and reporter levels, and to the BBC TV, BBC Radio, BBC Scotland, BBC Wales, the ITA, ITN, and 11 of the 14 ITV regional companies, excluding only Grampian, Ulster and Channel, at management, controller, and head of news and current affairs levels. The Times, Guardian, Economist, Daily Mail, Mirror, Sun, Sunday Times and News of the World declared themselves editorially favourable and prepared to assist. The Daily Telegraph and Financial Times felt it necessary to strike an editorial balance, but on the favourable side. The main regional newspapers approached also responded favourably. One thing I found particularly disgusting was this: letters to the press and public. Between September 1970 and October 1971, IRD, which is the Information Research Department of the government, kept up a steady stream of letters and articles to the press, working closely with the European movement, and also drafted the replies to over 2,000 letters from the general public. Instructions for writing these letters are to be found elsewhere in these documents, and in actuality a whole department was set up to write letters from fictitious people, supposedly members of the public, to the Times and other newspapers, all pro-EU of course, and also, as stated above, to draft replies back to innocent people who had written in to ask questions thinking they would get a truthful answer. The results of all these activities, or these particular activities, were reported later in the documents. Here is what they have to say about this particular one. The arrangements for letters to the press, on the other hand, in which IRD helped, worked splendidly. IRD, as we know, stands for the Information Research Department. Bravo to them for helping and colluding with the European Union to dupe the unsuspecting public. Whilst there are pages and pages bragging about the success of this battle, this one takes the cake. Both television and radio, despite their rules of impartiality, were judged by the German embassy in a careful assessment in early August to be contributing importantly and favourably. Now, apart from the spelling error, which somehow seems to add insult to injury, the German embassy, does this not indeed suggest that many anti-EU commentators, researchers, and even some politicians have said all along that perhaps World War II never finished, it just changed its tactics? As a friend of mine is fond of saying, if you're not angry now, you're not paying attention. With this in mind, please think very, very carefully before you vote. Does Britain really want to find out that we lost the war after all? This was a report on the campaign of 1975. Think just how much more advanced they will be in their deviousness, lies and mind manipulation today. Do you really think you have a free choice as to where you put that cross? Are you going to believe everything that you hear on the TV from now on? Party politics have no place in this decision. The future of your children and grandchildren does. United as one, we can and will win this war, once and for all, in the up-and-coming referendum. There is only one answer: a complete Brexit. Leave, 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 leave. Please like, share and subscribe. It is vital to get this information to everyone possible. Thank you.